Heartwarming rescue revealed. Incredible mother cow saves her calf from a ferocious python attack. Jane leaned against the cool wooden fence of her modest family farm, the sun hanging low in the Texas sky, painting everything in shades of gold. Cattle munched lazily on hay while her two kids, Lily and Jake, chased each other amongst wildflowers, laughter ringing like music in the gentle breeze. But beneath this idyllic scene lurked a growing shadow. A notorious python had been spotted prowling near their land. Life out here was never easy. Bills piled high, and the weight of the farm rested squarely on Jane's shoulders. Despite the struggle, she found strength in her connection to the land. She admired Daisy, the brave mother cow, and her energetic calf, Benny, who mirrored Jane's fierce love for her own children. It was a bond that crossed species, one embodying loyalty and protection, especially in a world that often threatened to tear them apart. But that summer, things turned dangerously awry. Just days after the town potluck, a comforting tradition where neighbors shared homemade casseroles and heartfelt stories, the python was reported close to the farm. Jane felt the air grow thicker with tension as Daisy kept a watchful eye on her calf. Something deep inside Jane knew she had to protect her kids and her animals, just as Daisy protected Benny. Then one sweltering afternoon, the sun slipped below the horizon. Shadows stretched long across the land, and with a shocking blur, the python lunged at unsuspecting Benny. It was a sight no one could prepare for. In an electrifying moment, Daisy charged, her muscles taut with fury and love. The battle that followed was raw and primal, filled with the desperate cries of a mother defending her child against a relentless foe. The chaos galvanized Jane's neighbors, and they rushed over in a frenzy, their hearts pounding with adrenaline. They worked together, tending to the wounded Daisy and Benny, but more importantly, they checked on Jane, who often wore her struggles like a second skin. After the dust settled, the story of Daisy's extraordinary bravery spread like wildfire through the community. Conversations shifted from gossip to admiration of the love that transcended species. "Did you hear about Daisy?" someone whispered at the diner. "That cow fought tooth and nail for her calf. Imagine what Jane must feel seeing that." Jane began to feel the stirrings of something deep within, an understanding that mirrored Daisy's unwavering spirit. If a cow could summon up such extraordinary courage for family, so could she. The moment ignited a fire in her, propelling her to confront her fears and fight for her kids with renewed vigor. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But just as hope began to breathe life into Jane's struggles, an unexpected twist took shape. A local farmer, knowing the hard work she had put into her land, offered to help. It stirred old emotions in Jane, a mixture of pride and vulnerability. Could she accept help without losing her independence? With the python still lurking, that question hung over them like a storm cloud. Would the strength of their community be enough to hold back the darkness encroaching on their lives? As the sun set on that fateful day, uncertainty loomed, leaving Jane at a crossroads. Would she find the courage to lean on others and embrace the new, undefined future that lay ahead? The next morning dawned with a heavy mist hanging over the farm, cloaking everything in an eerie silence. Jane stepped outside, the cool air wrapping around her like a damp blanket. She squinted into the distance, scanning the fields. The lingering fear of the python still gnawed at her, but beneath it lay something braver, a flicker of hope ignited by the previous day's turmoil. Lily and Jake had already bounded outside, their laughter echoing against the corrals as they played tag. It warmed Jane's heart to see their joy, if only for a moment. Closing her eyes, she inhaled deeply, letting the earthy aroma of the farm sink into her lungs. She had made this land her home, and just like Daisy, she felt the relentless need to protect what she cherished. As she strolled towards the pasture, she spotted Daisy, who was pushing a determined Benny away from the edge of the fence. Those protective instincts rang true, and it struck Jane how similar they were, both mothers ready to fight against odds much larger than themselves. Feeling compelled to act, Jane marched over to where the local farmer, Mr. Thompson, had set up camp by the barn. His demeanor was steadfast, but she sensed a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "You don't have to do this alone," he said gently. "We can keep watch together." Jane hesitated. Pride swelled within her, battling the vulnerability that surged. What if accepting help opened the door to dependency? But then Daisy's fierce defense of Benny flashed in her mind. Love and unity were stronger than pride. With a deep breath, she gave a small nod. "All right, let us do this together," she said, her voice steadying. The decision felt like a weight lifting off her shoulders. As the day wore on, Jane and Mr. Thompson set up a watch. They exchanged stories, their laughter rising into the sunny sky as they shared their struggles and victories. Jane felt lighter, as if the burden she had shouldered for so long was shared, even if just a little. The connection grew deeper, and she realized that community was not just about living close, it was about standing together against the darkness. But just as spirits began to rise, a chilling shriek from the nearby field shattered their moment of ease. All conversation halted, nerves prickled, and a chill raced up Jane's spine. She turned quickly to see Lily and Jake, frozen in fear, pointing towards the tall grass. Jane's heart raced as she followed their gaze, and there, emerging from the foliage like a nightmare, was the python. Daisy's stance shifted immediately, her protective instincts kicking in once again. But this time, Jane felt an overwhelming urge to act. "Get the kids inside," she shouted as adrenaline surged through her veins. She grabbed a pitchfork leaning against the barn and rushed towards the scene. For a moment, time seemed to stretch. This wasn't just about her farm, it was about everything she loved. Would Daisy and Jane's newfound courage hold back this beast? Would their bond between mothers and community be enough to overcome the most primal fears? As the snake slithered towards them, Jane's breath quickened. She could almost feel the air crackle with tension. "Move, Daisy!" she yelled as both impulses and instincts collided within her. Amid the chaos, she faced the encroaching danger. Would this prove to be their defining moment of unity and resolve, or would it lead to a confrontation neither could win? As the python advanced, Jane knew that this was a fight for survival, a fight for family. The python edged closer, thick and menacing, its scales glistening in the dim light. Jane's heart thundered in her chest, each beat echoing her fear, yet something deeper stirred inside her, a deep-rooted instinct to protect those she loved. "Daisy, back to Benny!" Jane shouted, voice dripping with urgency. Daisy hesitated for just a moment, as if weighing her options, but instinct took over. She turned, galloping back to her calf, her hoofs pounding against the earth like a war drum. Jane tightened her grip on the pitchfork, its weight suddenly feeling like a leaden burden. She took a deep breath. The world around her blurred, drowning in white noise while she focused on the enormous snake. She felt the warmth of the sun on her back, a silent reminder of the life she fought for, of Lily, Jake, and the last threads of innocence they held on to. Suddenly, the python lunged. Jane barely had time to react, but she thrust the pitchfork forward instinctively, her movements fueled by adrenaline. The steel-pronged tip caught the snake, pushing it back, but not without an angry hiss. Time seemed suspended as Jane realized she had just drawn a line in the sand. The creature recoiled, and fear radiated throughout the pasture like a palpable wave. "Mr. Thompson! Move the kids inside!" Jane cried, her voice rising above the chaos. Community instincts kicked in, then, as Mr. Thompson swiftly grabbed Lily and Jake and ushered them into the barn, shielding them from the horror unfolding outside. Daisy, still near Benny, stood her ground, her stance strong and defiant. With low, furious bellows, she challenged the creature, charging forward. The python, caught between two fierce mothers, faltered. It was a standoff. Jane's eyes met Daisy's, and in that exchange, something remarkable happened. Daisy seemed to understand the weight of their fight. Jane felt a surge of determination radiate from the cow, as if they were united in their desperation to protect. A bond that transcended any instinctual fear strengthened in that moment. Mother to mother, warrior to warrior. Jane steadied herself, positioning the pitchfork defensively. "One more time," she thought, adrenaline coursing through her veins as she faced the beast head-on. The python, sensing a shift, turned its attention toward Daisy, momentarily sidelined by Jane's actions. This felt like her moment, like destiny knitting together paths intertwined, but as she prepared to strike again, an unexpected glint caught her eye. Just beyond the pasture, she saw a swing of color, a flash of red against the muted greens. It was her neighbor, Mrs. Harper, hastily making her way with a few others from the community. Concern etched onto their faces, they rallied together, buoyed by fear but emboldened by a shared purpose. "Jane! Get behind us!" Mrs. Harper called out. That warm sense of community Jane had felt earlier rushed back, surrounding them like a protective shield. With reinforcements coming, it felt as if hope ignited a fire within her. They not only battled the python, they were standing together against the darkness that had threatened to engulf them. Just as the first few volunteers reached her side, all eyes snapping towards the python, shifting its focus again, Jane felt the tension pulse with potential. Would they defeat the lurking threat? Together, could strength in numbers pave a way through fear? She took a step forward, resolve tightening her chest, and as the moment teetered on the edge of chaos and hope, Jane prepared for the fight of their lives. But little did she know this was just the beginning of a battle that would test the very essence of her heart and the bonds of her community. What would it take to drive the python away for good? In the face of danger, could their unity lead to an unthinkable rescue? In that electric moment, when fear crackled like distant thunder and hope flickered like a candle in the wind, Jane felt the heartbeat of the community rally around her. Mrs. Harper and the others arrived, forming a wall of courage behind her. The python, sensing its precarious position, hissed loudly, a warning that intensified the air around them. "Everyone, grab something. We need to push it away," Mrs. Harper commanded, urgency tinging her voice. Men and women scrambled, picking up anything they could find: sticks, stones, even old farm tools, their resolve palpable and heating the air with determination. Jane's heart swelled with gratitude as she saw the neighbors, familiar faces twisted in concentration, stepping into the fray with her. Each one of them had their own reasons for fighting, for their families, for peace, for their cherished way of life. There was a quiet strength in their solidarity, an understanding that defined a life well lived amidst the sprawling pastures of their small town. Daisy remained steadfast, bellows ringing out like sirens, urging her calf to retreat further into safety. Benny sensed the danger, his instinct too strong to ignore. Yet he stood frozen, eyes wide with naivete. "Come on, man. Move!" Jane shouted, desperation creeping into her tone. "You've got to trust us." At that moment, the python lunged again, its rhythm interrupted by the oncoming wall of people. It twisted and coiled, eyes gleaming with a primal fury and hunger. Jane instinctively moved closer, the pitchfork feeling less like a weapon and more like a symbol of hope that they could fight back, that they could protect the innocent. Just then, Jake peered from the barn, his small frame barely visible. He saw his mother, saw the danger, and a spark of realization lit up his eyes. "Mom. No!" he screamed, panic slicing through the tension. It was like a trigger. Hearing her son's voice shattered Jane's focus, forcing her to glance back. "Get back inside!" she yelled, her voice breaking slightly under the weight of motherly instinct. But deep down, she knew that if they were going to succeed, they needed to keep the kids out of harm's way. With her heart racing, Jane looked back at the python, which now turned toward her with predatory eyes. A cacophony of voices filled the air, encouragement and urgency mingling into a storm of willpower. "On three!" Mrs. Harper shouted. Everyone gathered closer, hands gripping their makeshift weapons, ready for a united front. 1, 2, 3. At that signal, they surged forward together, their combined strength creating an undeniable force against the serpent. Jane thrust her pitchfork, aiming for the vulnerable spot just under the python's jaw. The cold steel met its scales again, and this time it let out a guttural sound, more surprise than aggression. The python was losing its advantage. With every moment, it became apparent that it was not just Jane battling the creature, it was the farmers, the neighbors, the community forming an unbreakable chain of defiance. But then, amidst the chaos, something unexpected happened. From the edge of the pasture came another figure, a flicker of brown and white against the vibrant green. It was Benny, finally mustering the courage to move. "Benny, no!" Jane held, fear shattering her armor of bravery. As the python turned towards the young calf, everything hung in the balance, a precarious moment slipping between them. Would Benny step back to safety? Or would he become an unwitting pawn in the looming conflict? The moment twisted a knife sharply into the hearts of those watching, each observer holding their breath, a collective hope turning to dread. In the face of nature's fury, would solidarity prevail, or would they pay the price of separation? What could emerge from this clash? A hero, a lesson, a painful loss? The moment Benny took his hesitant step forward, everything seemed to slow down. The air thickened with tension, and Jane's heart pounded in her chest like a drum. She felt the weight of the entire community's hopes resting on her shoulders. "Benny, please!" she cried, but her voice was almost swallowed by the fear enveloping them. The python, sensing the movement, shifted its focus, eyes narrowing on the young calf. A deep hiss echoed, and Jane could see its muscles ripple, preparing to strike. It was as if nature was holding its breath, waiting for the outcome of a battle that had unknowingly become bigger than any one of them. Benny, despite the rising panic around him, stood his ground. His little legs trembled, but there was a spark deep inside, something pushing him to be brave, to protect. "Mom!" he called, his voice shaking with emotion, resonating with the fearful love between them. In that instant, Daisy charged forward. With a determined lowing, her strength burst forth as she leapt into action. She thrust herself in front of Benny, her massive frame blocking the python's path. The sight of the mother cow defending her calf sparked an unyielding strength among the community. "Together!" Mrs. Harper shouted, rekindling the fire burning within each farmer. Those closest to Jane tightened their grips on their makeshift weapons, and she felt an electric surge coursing through the group. Lines of bravery were drawn, disbelief shifting to sheer determination. Daisy swung her head, catching the serpent off guard, and the momentum created a precious moment of distraction. Jane seized the opportunity. She hurled her pitchfork forward, piercing through the air, aimed right for the python's vulnerable spot. As the steel struck true, a thunderous hiss erupted, and pain shocked through the reptile. It recoiled, giving the community just enough time to close in tighter, their fear replaced by boldness. Every person surged together, channeling their shared will to love, the ancestral ties to the land they fought to protect. The python began to lose its grip on both the pasture and their spirits. "Keep going!" someone shouted, their voice fierce, infusing renewed courage into the air. But amidst the chaos, there was a flicker of uncertainty. Jane's heart swirled with worry as she watched Daisy protect Benny. Would the python strike again? Was the brave mother cow putting herself in danger? A shudder of fear raced down her spine. Once more, the python twisted around, but Daisy was resolute. She stomped her feet and charged, forcing the snake back and away from her calf. For every hiss from the serpent, there was a loud bellow from Daisy. And in that terrifying moment, the little calf stepped closer to his mother, his trust in her apparent. Their solidarity struck like a chord, echoing through the community. Eyes wide, they witnessed an extraordinary display of maternal love and the strength of a unified front. Each pulse of their hearts aligned, creating a melody of hope against despair. Then came the final collective push. "Now!" Jane called, an invading war cry that harmonized with the community. They swung together, sticks and pitchforks raised, a symphony of determination resonating through the field, and just as they pressed on, the python swerved away, its slithering body retreating. The crowd erupted in relieved cheers, tears of joy springing to everyone's eyes as the serpent disappeared into the underbrush, its threat diminished by the love of a mother and the bond of a community. But in the midst of the victory celebration, as Benny nestled close to an exhausted yet proud Daisy, a strange rustling came from the bushes. Jane's heart sank as dread washed over her. Was there more danger lurking behind the leaves, or was it a sign that peace had returned? As she narrowed her eyes, trying to pierce through the foliage, a shadow moved. What would emerge from the brambles next? As Jane squinted into the thick brush, her heart raced once more. Every instinct screamed at her to call out to the community, to warn them that danger was still near. But as she stood there, breath caught in her throat, she noticed the rustling grew louder, a frantic struggle breaking through the prickling underbrush. "Everyone, be ready!" she finally shouted, her voice cutting through the relief that still hung in the air. Eyes turned, feet shifted. Each farmer regripped their makeshift weapons, faces now drawn, prepared for another fight. But then, from the sheltering leaves, something small emerged. The community collectively held its breath. It looked like a puppy? Bright, curious eyes peered out at them, innocent and wide, its coat a soft, muddied brown. What in the world? Jane could hardly find words. For a moment, the tension diluted. The puppy sniffed the ground, completely unaware of the drama that had just unfolded. As it stepped closer to the edge of the bushes, tail wagging in sweet oblivion, the crowd's fear slowly transformed into laughter mingled with confusion. Just then, a familiar face broke through the foliage behind the puppy. Timmy, the neighbor boy, no more than 8 years old. "I'm sorry," he cried, scrambling after his runaway pet. "I didn't mean to scare everyone." Relief surged through Jane as the tight knot of anxiety in her stomach began to unravel. "Timmy, you have to stay closer next time," she scolded gently, although her voice softened with the palpable joy that swept through the crowd. "I thought Benny needed a buddy," he replied, his face brightening at the sight of the calf. "Look, he's okay." Benny stepped forward, curious about the little creature, their fears somehow forgotten as they found solace in tenderness. At that moment, it was as if the community collectively exhaled, releasing the tension that had held them captive not long ago. Together, Mrs. Harper chimed again, this time not a command but a reminder, echoing back to the strength and unity they shared today. Laughter combined with the familiar sounds of the farm returned as the story of Daisy's bravery began to circulate, and individuals exchanged encouraging words. But even as the community began to disperse, Jane couldn't shake the leftover feeling of unease. What if the python wasn't gone for good? What if it returned, driven by hunger or rage? The joy around her felt light, yet shadows loomed, a memory of fear lingering in her mind. She approached Daisy and Benny, both of them nestled in a small patch of grass, and gently scratched Daisy behind her ears. "You were so brave," Jane whispered, filled with gratitude and admiration. A contented moo resonated from the mother cow, as if she understood the weight of her actions. At that moment, just as the sun dipped low and painted the sky a brilliant orange, a piercing sound sliced through the evening, an ominous rustle from the far edge of the pasture. Jane's heart dropped. The noise was unmistakable, familiar, and dreadful. "Is that?" she asked aloud, barely able to finish her thought. Eyes once again turned to the bushes, expectation twisting tightly in their chests. As the rustling grew louder, the ground quaked softly, a low, threatening hiss filling the air. Was it the python returning? Or something worse? The crowd froze, hearts racing all over again. In that chilling moment of uncertainty, they all stood together, awaiting whatever darkness might emerge next. A tense hush fell over the crowd. Jane felt her heart pound in her chest, each beat echoing her rising fear. The bushes rustled again, a low, rhythmic sound like a whisper of doom. The community stood entranced, every face painted with concern, eyes wide with apprehension. "Stay together. Don't lose hope," Mrs. Harper called out, her voice a steady anchor against the swirl of anxiety. Yet Jane couldn't shake the nagging dread that clawed at her insides. What if this was it? What if that hiss meant they were truly in danger again? The bushes swayed violently, branches snapping under the weight of whatever lurked within. Jane took a cautious step forward, desperate to see. Everyone held their collective breaths, straining to catch a glimpse of the threat they all feared so much. Then, it happened. With sudden intensity, the python burst forth from its cover, glistening scales catching the final rays of the setting sun. Its wide jaws parted, revealing teeth designed to terrify. Gasps erupted from the community, a chorus of shocked disbelief and raw terror. But Jane's eyes were drawn not only to the serpent, but to the robust figure of Daisy, her loyal mother cow. Jane lost track of all that was happening around her. The world faded, leaving only the dramatic standoff between cow and python. In a heartbeat, Daisy positioned herself in front of Benny, her wide stance a barrier of stone against the intruder. The cow lowered her head, eyes fierce with determination. This was her calf, her responsibility in that moment. All fear was replaced by instinct. "Daisy, no!" Jane called out, panic slicing through her voice. But it seemed Daisy could hear her heart, know that protecting Benny was the only thing that mattered. The python flicked its tongue, sensing the presence of both the mother and her calf, debating its next move. Time felt like it slowed. The python lunged forward, but Daisy was ready. With a powerful swing of her body, she thrust her horns towards the snake, catching it in a calculated charge that startled everyone watching. The surprise of the attack sent the python reeling back, hissing in agitation, furious but confused. The crowd erupted in a mixture of awe and encouragement for Daisy. "Go, girl!" someone shouted, and soon others chimed in, their voices rising above the frantic energy of the moment. As the creature slithered back, determination etched across Daisy's face mirrored the growing strength in her herd's hearts. They would fight as one. Whatever came, they would face it together. Then, it happened. With a strike all too swift, the python lunged again, but this time it was met not only by Daisy's strength but by the united will of the community as well. Armed with tools, pitchforks, a few ropes, they rushed forward, ready to stand shoulder to shoulder. In that moment, something shifted. What had once been fear transformed into raw courage. Jane's heartbeat synchronized with the chaos, and she felt a firm resolve surge within her. "Together!" she shouted, echoing Mrs. Harper, the mantra for their unity. But just as victory seemed possible, the python quailed and prepared to retaliate. In the looming silence, the community held its breath once more, the air thick with uncertainty. Would it be enough? Would they rally together enough to succeed? As tension thickened, one question lingered: would Daisy's bravery and the community's resolve be enough to defeat the menace that threatened their very lives? The python, sensing the shift in momentum, recoiled in fury, its tongue flicking as it eyed the now emboldened community. Jane's heart raced. She felt the weight of their collective fear, yet within that weight, a spark of courage flickered to life. Daisy wouldn't back down. The cow stamped her hooves, the sound resonating through the stillness like a war drum. She bellowed, a fierce cry that sent a shiver down Jane's spine. It was a call to defend, a promise that her heart would not yield even against nature's most formidable predator. "Don't let fear take hold," Mrs. Harper shouted again, rallying the townsfolk with a ferocity that matched Daisy's. It was a small town, but their hearts beat loudly for one another. As they formed a shield around Daisy and Benny, Jane could see the determination in their eyes, a glow of defiance that promised to protect their own at all costs. The snake lunged again, its sleek body coiling like a thick, dark shadow. But this time, the townspeople moved in unison. Pitchforks raised, ropes ready, they surged forward together. The crack of wood and the rush of bodies surged through the air, and for a moment, Jane felt a surge of hope, the kind that promised victory. Daisy charged forward, head lowered, and struck the python again. This time, it was met not just with her strength but with the combined will of the community behind her. A pitchfork struck the serpent's side, making it hiss angrily, while others swung their tools with primal ferocity. "Keep pushing! Keep fighting!" Jane yelled, her voice cracking but full of unyielding spirit. The energy in the air became palpable, a tangible wave that surged from one member of the community to the next. They were all in this together, bonded by their fears and their determination. The python writhed in agony, its focus shifting from the cow to the community. The desperation etched on its face was mirrored by the growing confidence in the townsfolk. With every movement, they grew bolder. Then, in an instant, the snake reared back, preparing for one final strike. It felt like time stopped. Jane saw the chaos unfold like a slow-motion movie, fear seeping into every corner of her heart again. Then Daisy, sensing the impending attack, stepped bravely into the line of fire. "Daisy!" Jane screamed, her voice cracking. Her world narrowed to that singular moment, the cow's bravery shimmering in the twilight. Just then, Mrs. Harper raced forward, her pitchfork aimed precisely, knowing full well the risk. The crowd gasped, a shared intake of breath echoing in the surroundings. Would they be too late? With a final push, Jane reached out, courage flooding through her veins. Their lives, the sanctuary they built, depended on this moment. Unbeknownst to her, she had stepped forward too, joining the rush of humanity, ready to fight for what mattered most. Was this desperation or hope? The thrill of risk coursed through Jane like fire. With a mighty roar, the community's voices rose, merging into a battle cry that rippled across the field. But then, with the air crackling with tension and anticipation, Jane wondered, could the collective strength truly subdue the beast? As the final clash loomed, one thought consumed her: was this the moment they could break the cycle of fear, or would this day end in tragedy? The python lashed out, its fangs bared, a glimmer of moonlight catching on its glistening scales. In the split second before the chaos erupted, the world around Jane felt breathless, suspended. She could feel the pounding of her heart mingling with the thudding hooves of Daisy as the cow surged forward, embodying the raw force of motherhood. "Not today!" Jane shouted, her voice ringing clear above the tumult. She could see Mrs. Harper, poised with determination, ready to strike, her pitchfork a beacon of hope. The townsfolk surged forward, a wall of bodies and resolve, each second stretching as they bore witness to this harrowing standoff. Daisy collided with the python once more, her heavy body impacting with defiance. The snake recoiled, momentarily bewildered. For a heartbeat, it seemed to falter, and the town rallied. "Push together!" shouted Mr. Thompson, his voice gruff yet full of fervor. The townspeople responded with a fervor that shook the ground, pitchforks and ropes moving in sync like a well-rehearsed dance. Jane was swept into this tide, adrenaline lending her legs strength as the collective spirit seemed to course through her. Daisy bellowed again, a sound that harmonized with their voices, a raw expression of steadfast bravery. The python twisted, its movements frantic, sensing the shift in power. "Keep it up! We can do this!" Jane urged, her heart racing at the sight of everyone giving their all, neighbors, friends, and the bonds they held dear. But the python was not done. With a venomous hiss, it darted toward Jane. Time moved in layers again, and she felt an instinctive pull to retreat. But Daisy had already anticipated the attack, blocking Jane with her massive bulk. "No!" Jane gasped, eyes wide. The snake struck with terrifying speed. In that moment, the world narrowed to flashes of instinct. Mrs. Harper dashed forward, pitchfork aimed directly at the serpent's throat. She lunged, determination etched into every line of her face. Then, as though in slow motion, Jane caught a glimpse of the townsfolk, their expressions a mixture of fear and fierce bravery, ready to overwhelm the menace that had threatened their peace. The pitchfork connected, a sickening thud echoing over the cries of the distressed crowd. For a moment, silence fell. Everyone stood still, breath held tight. Then the python's shriek pierced the night, a terrible cry of desperation, as it flailed. Chaos erupted again, fueled by fear, but intertwined with hope. "Finish it!" Jane yelled, the words igniting a fire in the hearts of many. The townsfolk surged forward, relentless in their united front, fueled by Daisy's courage and their own shared strength. They swung, pushed, and held on tight. In the tumult of bodies, Jane's resolve burned brighter. She had never felt such a fierce connection to her community, like their shared heartbeat pulsed in the air. Each movement was laced with shared purpose, a gathering of souls fighting not just for survival but for tomorrow. Finally, with one last desperate lunge, the townsfolk encircled the python. The primal resolve morphed into a deafening roar, echoing into the night. The python twisted one final time, then fell still, defeated. Jane stood in a whirlwind of emotions. Relief washed over her, but it was joy mingled with disbelief. They had done it. Together, they had faced darkness and emerged into the light. But as the adrenaline began to fade, a new fear flickered in Jane's heart. What next? What would it take to ensure they didn't face such a threat again? Before she could voice her worry, Mrs. Harper approached, winded yet still fierce. "We can't let our guard down, not now." Jane nodded, fear creeping back in. What awaited them beyond this night? The battle had been won, but the war for their safety and peace had only just begun. As dawn broke over the Texas horizon, the sun spilled warm golden light across the farm, washing away the remnants of the night's harrowing chaos. The community, bruised but triumphant, began to gather around the pasture, exchanging weary smiles and soft laughter. They stood together, bonded by the battle they fought and won, their hearts swelling with pride for each other and for their courageous mother cow. Daisy Jane took a deep breath, letting the fresh morning air fill her lungs. Tension began to ease, unraveling in the light of the day. She glanced towards Daisy, who was grazing peacefully with Benny nestled safely by her side. A wave of relief swept over Jane. They had protected their family, and this journey had transformed her. It was time to embrace the strength flowing not just from within, but from the community that had come to her side. Walking towards her neighbors, Jane felt different. Stronger. Each shuffle of her feet was lighter, each heartbeat infused with purpose. "Thank you all," she said, her voice steady, though shimmering with emotion. "Last night brought out something incredible in us. We fought together because we believed in each other. There's nothing we wouldn't do for you and your farm, Jane," Mr. Thompson replied, his face etched with concern and warmth. "We can't just protect you. We need to look after this whole community. We are family." And in that moment, Jane realized something monumental. It wasn't just about her struggling farm or the lurking danger of the python. It was about standing united for every single person, animal, and farm that made up their small corner of the world. They had faced one threat, but the power to protect each other would create a future brighter than any she could have envisioned alone. As the sun rose higher, the community convened in a circle. They discussed plans for safety measures, and Jane listened intently, more engaged than she had ever been. "Let us form a watch," Jane suggested. "We'll take turns keeping an eye on the fields, and help each other out during those long nights." Her voice resonated with newfound confidence. The townsfolk nodded in agreement. "Let us do it. We'll be ready for anything," someone shouted, and the sentiment rippled through the group. Determination radiated from each neighbor, as they realized the strength of their bond made them unbreakable. And as the meeting concluded, Jane felt a bittersweet ache in her heart. Benny had been brave, just like Daisy, and wasn't he just a reflection of her struggles? He was a symbol of hope for the future. She knelt beside him, brushing her fingers over his soft fur. "You won't ever have to be afraid, my little one," she whispered, tears of joy filling her eyes. "With every mama in this community beside us, you'll know nothing can harm you." At that moment, Lily and Jake scampered over, joyfully chattering about plans to create a beautiful garden, something that could flourish under their attentive care. "Can we plant flowers near the barn, Mom?" Lily asked, her eyes sparkling like the morning dew. "Yes. Let us make it the best garden ever," Jane replied, smiling through the tight knot of emotion in her chest. This was how they would reclaim their space, not just as individuals but as a family, as a community that thrived together. Days turned into weeks, and the flowers bloomed just as their spirits did. The garden became a sanctuary, a reminder of their strength and resilience. When news of the python's defeat spread, it became a story of bravery that served to inspire others. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore, they were building a legacy that echoed through the generations. As Jane looked out at her farm, she felt the weight of hardships lift. The connection she had to her children, to Daisy, and the people standing strong around her was a tapestry woven with love and courage. Together, they had turned fear into fierce loyalty and forged a community that thrived every day with purpose. This was how life was meant to be, held fast in the arms of those who loved fiercely and protected unconditionally. She knew now that embracing vulnerability made her stronger, more capable of facing whatever challenges lay ahead. With a full heart and radiant smile, Jane looked toward the future. They had already overcome so much. There was no doubt they could rise to any occasion as long as they stood together. And somewhere in the pasture, Daisy loyally nuzzled her calf with a sense of peace, knowing they would never face darkness alone again. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now to see more inspiring stories of bravery and community coming your way. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and spread this heartwarming transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness the power of unity. Tell me your reactions and feelings about the ending in the comments below. Your thoughts matter.